So welcome everyone. So glad that you're here to join us for a free human design system lecture on the mystical profiles. You can see that Darshana Deborah Matthews is your host for today. She is with the International Human Design School as a teacher, and also she has her own nonprofit corporation called the Tao of Human Design. She's on the right angle cross of service, and it's been my pleasure to know her for the past 5 years and have her be my personal mentor and teacher throughout all of the wonderful experiences that you enter into when you first come across human design, from the very beginning of your first classes to becoming an analyst. So she can take you all the way through that. And one of the things that she does is she teaches rave cosmology at the International Human Design School. So it's a fascinating subject. I hope you enjoy this dive into the mystical way of awakening. And this particular series, this webinar that you're in right now, is about the mystical profiles. So Darshana, would you like to begin our presentation?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for saying that. Yeah, so one of the reasons why I have had really like a passion about sharing this knowledge on a webinar so that more people can have access to it, is because I find it so profound to realize that just like we learn with understanding our design, that we are in a conditioning field that is also in a way determining how we relate to the mystic or to the spiritual or to the religious, or however we identify that. And that it is, and that it's dominating the entire planet. Included with that is that as we come towards 2027, according to the voice that Rob was passing on the information to us about, we have a shift in the in the conditioning field, so that we're moving away from a world that is conditioned very much by the pressure of the need to have a relationship with something that is beyond us, with the great unknown, into being much more individuated, much more connected to groups, with intimacy with others, and the feeling of one-on-oneness with people, but more than that, the individuation of each being, through the coming in of the channel 2024. Let's see if I've got that on here. How do I go to the next slide? Here. And one of the things that Ross said when he taught this knowledge, and this part of the knowledge quite some years ago, was that the benefit of it is that it's also going to help us to make the shift by understanding the dynamics of the way we are being conditioned through the neutrino consciousness stream, and the positioning of our little solar system in our galaxy that is in its vast position in our universe. We're able to support other people who may not have access to this knowledge, may not, or I mean, many don't, and many will choose not to, but that just by understanding and watching and sharing in whatever way that we can, that is correct for us and is correct for the other, we can support people to make sense of this change. We watch in America right now the craziness that's going on there. And there is a profound shift happening. I'm from the States, and I live in Denmark now. And we see that we just had our election yesterday here. And even here, there's a shift. In my son's girlfriend's from Austria. She was talking about, the way everything is moving. And we seem to think, or at least I've thought, that by having reached this point in the evolution of man, that we would have somehow come to a bit more balance and harmony and consciousness, and honoring the being of other beings, having a sense of respect. Through the mystical way, and through the next course that I'll be teaching at Rave Cosmology, which, by the way, I just had someone ask me, all the cosmology courses are open to anyone at any time. So it's not like you have to start at the beginning and take it all the way through, or that you have to be choosing to do it for any other reason than your own curiosity. The next course, I'll have some slides at the end of our webinar here today that bring that up, of the roles that our profiles are here to teach us. And our roles, if you're not that familiar with human design, is something that gives us our costume and our way of moving through the world. It comes from the sun, the position of the sun and the earth at the moment of our birth, and also 88 degrees of the sun before we're born. So when I created the blurb for this webinar, I had been meeting different people who have taken some of the human design knowledge and evolved it into their own expressions, which is what we're here to do. We're here to differentiate. But I noticed that sometimes they were saying that it was something that was not covering what they then would be covering, you know, that it somehow was a limitation. And that, you know, by saying you're a generator, or you're a projector, or you're a manifester, or you're a, you have this inner authority or that outer authority, that somehow we're confining you to that. And that is not at all what human design is providing. This is a mechanical tool that allows for us to understand the mechanics, just like understanding, you know, how our stomach takes food in, and the acids that go into the stomach and help to break down the food and pass it through our body and provide nutrition and proteins and the necessary elements for our human form to continue. Human design is not deterministic. It is mutative and evolutionary. It is about our evolving. Absolutely. We are here as a witness consciousness, as a passenger consciousness, as an awareness in a form. And that awareness that we are is not limited to this lifetime. It is not limited to this form in terms of, you know, eternity, but in terms of this life right now. I'm limited to this body right now. I mean, as long as I'm hanging out here and talking to you, I get this body that I'm wearing right now. And it has a construct. It has very specific imprinting that was done when I was born. And human design, again, helps us to identify what is consistent and reliable within us and where we're open. So it is about seeing that because of that imprinting system, as we incarnate, the general script of the life is laid out. The general script, the parameters, the qualities, the potentials, all that is there. Like, for example, I'm on the incarnation cross of service. Some of you also in the class are in that. I'm here to be of service. That is the parameter of my life and the quality, and yet, how am I going to do that? It doesn't actually matter where I am. I mean, I'll make decisions according to my authority and according to what comes to me and how I make decisions about that. But regardless of where I show up in this plane, the thematic is going to be about service. So this is what is laid out in the moment that we're born. And so the wonder of this knowledge is how much is revealed and can be revealed. Our profile and its subtle mystical layers of differentiation reveal so much about how beautiful and perfect this vehicle is. So on this journey of transformation, it's important to have markers. And human design provides us with this essential mapping. Why do we need markers? Well, because we live in a mental construct. We live in a world that is built so much on the mind. Mind, you know, I'm, again, my design is the cross of service. It's what we call a logical cross. So everything in my design is oriented towards trying to understand the pattern. And that understanding of the pattern goes up and filters through the mind that I have, you know, and then I can express it outward when it's correct for me to do so. We are a witness here. We are a passenger consciousness. So we are aware. And the only way that we can truly participate is through the mind. So how do we do that without being caught up in all the things that the mind can be entertained by and enjoy, right? Because it's a magical world out there. There's so many things to think about and engage with. And we don't even know that we go into where we are open and then somehow decide that's where we're going to make our decisions, rather than returning back to our form. The mind can only be expressed through what is the not self of the being. Now, this is really interesting, this piece here. This is how the mind is constructed. Our minds are constructed in our openness, in the openness of our design. So when we're looking at our mind, it's built on all the openness that we have. So when you look at your body graph, and those of the people that you're curious about, look at the open centers, look at the open gates, look at the open channels. This is where the mind is enjoying, taking in what is not you, what is not consistent and reliable. So we call that not self, right? Because it's not me. It's something outside of me. So it's the not self. It becomes a strategy when I decide to make decisions from that rather than from myself, my true self. So this not self strategies, this builds and it frames and creates the structure in which the way your mind is going to work for the rest of your life. And nothing's going to change that. Where you're open, you're open. You do have cycles that you go through, Saturn returns, Uranus oppositions, Chiron returns, second Saturn returns. You have your solar transits as you go through every year. You have daily transits right now. I was actually trying to pull up what the daily transit was. So what we have, the sun in gate 34, line 1 in the bully. The indiscriminate use of power. It's a conditioning field right now. So we're hardwired with the potential for differentiation. And that means that what is not wired is permanently not wired. What Ra means by that, this is Ra, is that it's not defined, it's not consistent. You didn't get imprinted there. This is the openness. This is where the other comes in. The other that is another person, another animal, a transit, an energetic field. And it's this openness that frames the way in which the mind operates. So the mind is built on its openness. For example, if you're someone who has an open or undefined ego, I do. Many people do. 70% of people have an undefined ego center. That's the little tiny square that's sort of off-center in the body graph that we call the heart center, or the ego or the will. There's only 4 gates in it, so it has less opportunity or opportunities to get defined. So when you're operating correctly and when you are mentally a passenger, the way in which you are going to express that information that comes in through your ego center is through the wisdom of the ego. So what you're going to be able to see then is false promises. Because, and what this, you learn this in the beginning in human design, like the ego center is, if you have it open, you're not here to make promises. Well, if we remember that the heart center is about the capacity to engage your will, to say, I will. Only people who have it defined can truly say, I will. Those who have it open, well, me, I would say, intuitively, I can feel that's healthy and safe, and I feel recognized. So, okay, not I will, not from my will. I have no consistency there. So where am I? Yeah, so what you're going to be able to see is the false promises, and it's important to see that it is not just about seeing the personality as okay. Here are the keys, here's the profile, but we're talking about the mind. And in order to understand the mind, you have to understand the mind is built on openness. And in order to really look at yourself within this context, to understand that you're going to have to live out as a role, that we have roles through our profile, and we'll be looking at the mystical profile. It's going to be expressed through the uniqueness that you bring to that role, the uniqueness that you bring. I'm a third line profile in the personality. That role is that of the priest. How is that? You know, we each have our own mystical profile and profile. Ra, as you can see, had an open, I don't know if I can, let's see. This is the sacral center, if you're not familiar with that. Again, around, just like with the heart center, around 70% of the people that are born have that center colored in. And sorry about that. And that means that you're not a generator. If that's colored in, you are what is called a type that is called a generator. So Ra, he was not a generator. His was open. And he had the ego center colored in. But he had an open root center, which is down here. Oh, I have all these things getting away here. Okay, I can't. Maybe you can see that. I can't because there's this thing popping up. He had an open root center. He had an open solar plexus. He had an open sacral, and he had an open head. Now, each of those centers have certain qualities. They're energy hubs. So his potential wisdom was in those open centers. This is where his mind could go in and watch, be the witness, observe. Through the openness of the sacral, he could understand the nature of life, the nature of being. This is the life force. This is, you know, this juicy, yummy engagement of life force that we all have. But Ra had an open relationship to it. Those of you who are generators have a consistent way that you experience it, the way it shows up. Through his solar plex, he was able to understand the experiential process of what it is to actually be here in this world. I mean, this whole center here is about feeling and the experiential way. You know, I'm here and you're here and I can feel you and it makes me feel happy, or I'm angry, or all these, you know, I feel tribal and bonded with you, or I'm expressing myself romantically and individually, or I'm going on new adventures, new cycles of development. Each of those things he could watch and witness. Then he had the open head and the open root center down at the bottom there. Those are both pressure centers. So he could understand and witness and become wise about the pressure from above, of all the ideas that are in the world, everything that pours in from outside, and all the pressure from below in the root of maintaining this life in this physical world, what it is here, what moves us, what controls us. So he expressed what appeared to be his wisdom to us in his outer authority was coming through his open centers. The same open centers that had been the enemy. He talks a lot about this in some of his more biological information, or throughout his whole teaching. He shares about how he was before his experience and after. When we're dealing with the body, it's easier because everything is straightforward and our inner authority and our body just falls into shape. And that's another thing, is that human design is what we call form, we're in a form consciousness, and through aligning and relaxing back into our form, then all the dance that our wonderful personality and awareness can do, this consciousness of, I'm here, this is me. But I'm in this form, I'm wearing this form, I'm aligned and bonded and merged to and held together and inextricably incapable of separating from my form, my design side. Mind is built on its openness. And it does not have the capacity to fall into place on its own. This is its great challenge. It's all over the place, the mind. Think about your mind. I mean, try meditating, right? You know, when you sit down and the mind's, I mean, there's all these wonderful little Zen poems and videos and stuff of that can goes on and on and on until you can learn to still that. So while our vehicle is operating correctly and putting us into all those particular situations where we have a particular advantage of our particular brain system and our particular sensory uniqueness, while we have that, it doesn't mean that our mind gets that. I do readings with people and I can say, oh, your motivation is what is one? Fear. And all of a sudden they're like going, oh, the mind immediately turns that into something, and the mind can get lost in that instead of being open to the inquiry of that and saying, well, what does that mean? How do I tune into that and understand that? Constantly moving these things that are part of this Zoom room. Sorry, so that's why sometimes I'm taking a bit of time. Anyway, so our personality, we all have a motivation, and when we're aligned with our form, our strategy, and our authority, which will guide us mechanically into doing what is correct, moving correctly for the energetics of our design, then we have access to really what our depth is and what we came here to do. But when we're in transference, when we transfer away from what is our true alignment, we do not have access to our depth. So then we're staying on the surface. And I always like to think of it as like, wood that has no resonance. When you knock on a piece of wood or something, and it just is kind of like a funk. That's what it's like when we're in our not self. And even though the personality isn't making decisions, it can't make sense of what is going on. It just can't, because it's not tapped into your uniqueness, your differentiatedness, journey that you're here to experience. So it's awakening, isn't it? It's truly about awakening. And what are we awakening to? It's a nice word. It's used a lot. Ultimately, right now, presence in this now. Nothing more than what is here. And what is here as me, what is here as you, is unique. And we cannot impose that on someone else, our uniqueness, our sense of it, our experience of it. We can share it through our outer authority, but we cannot ask another to live a life like we live. So to begin to understand the mind, we have to understand our not self, where we're open. And again, remember, this isn't just your open centers. There are people who have all 9 centers defined. There are people who have all 9 centers open, reflectors. But we have 26 gates potentially to become activated in our body graph. That's it. And sometimes they double up. And so of the 64, then you have a lot of openness just in those gates. So we're here to recognize what is not us and to begin to see that this is what we're here to learn. That we're here to investigate, explore, do inquiry. And this is the realm that we're here to investigate, each of you individually, where your role will flower. And that's what's, again, fun about learning your design and going deeper and deeper into it, is to begin to see, okay, my moon, for example, my personality moon, that's our driving focus. My personality moon is in gate 54 in line 4. It's kind of, I like it. It's a cool gate, I think. It's in line, it's called enlightenment and darkenment. And it knowing that really helped me to understand this driving focus that I have to bring transformation to my tribe by bringing the light in, or bringing light to the darkness, or even going into the darkness. We each have our own really beautiful journey where we will flower as our role. The personality role, that's the side, that's the moment of your birth. That's the day you were born. That's the one we are conscious of. Then it is your outer authority role. This is what you're here. This is what we're always saying, is that our mind is here to share our outer authority. So it is the role that says, look, I have learned something for you. And every single profile has a purpose. And this is our motto. Through whatever way, you know, just because it says, I have learned something for you, doesn't mean that you are sitting there preaching, or you could be moving. I've learned something for you that I'm going, you know, look how children share what they've learned. You know, they jump up and down, or they go and sit and go off and stare into space. Or, I mean, there's no way that it shows up other than your way. Every single profile has a purpose. This is our motto. I have learned something for you. I can share that with you through my outer authority when I am in alignment with my design, my strategy, and my authority. And this is what we're about. We're here to share with the other. So it goes back then to being correct, to honoring your inner authority. And for the two types that don't have an inner, you know, there's also what is called a no authority, or which is an authority that is gained through the experience of what is external, for reflectors and mental projectors. That's another story. This is the magic in the story here. And then to begin to experience your unique variation. And there's so many variations because they're going to be expressed through the openness. And they're going to be expressed in a way in which the mind has been conditioned to work. You know, I've done readings for identical twins, or actually they were fraternal twins, but they were born right at the same time. Even there, with the imprint being so close, there's two ways that it can change. There's nature and nurture. There's the nature where just a few minutes, what is it with base? It's 8 minutes. 8 minutes and you have a different base that is coming in, which is what is underneath the surface of the line. And then nurture, this reading I did was, one was a boy, one was a girl. How they're met in the world, you know, that's the nurturing part, how we get changed through that. So we looked at, in the last webinar, we began looking at the mystical way. And this is the mystical way. It starts in gate 19, it goes up to gate 49. Gate 19 is the gate of need, the pressure of need. The pressure to see in the interrelatedness of all things. It's a tribal gate. It's in the experiential way, you know, going, and meaning it goes up into the solar plexus. It goes into this, I'm here in the world with other people, and you, shall I bond with you? Will you meet my needs? Can I meet your needs? Do you have the right principles for me? And when we walk over into the mystical way, which is a circuit that is not one of the major circuits that we use, as I expressed last time, but is one that is, again, deeply conditioning us, holding this whole human force together in this. If you are a first line personality profile, the pressure that you have, regardless of whether you have gate 19 activated, whether it's part of a channel or whether it's just an open gate, with your profile in the first line on your personality center, it means that you're here to wonder what is beyond the known, what makes sense of it. We feel so lost in our world that we are seeking a way to make sense out of the chaos. Then we have gate 49, the gate of principles, higher principles, the gate of sacrifice, the gate of the butcher, of revolution, to receive. It's a gate in the solar plex. It's a tribal gate. I will receive your wondering. I will receive your, I mean, this is the second line of gate 19, but gate 49 is the one that's going to be taking in, because it's receiving the pressure from the 49, the need that is there for creating a God, creating something that makes sense of the chaos that is here. So the second line in gate 19 will be receiving then, because it's the line of the natural, the line of waiting to be called. Will they receive the call or not? If you have the third line in your profile, a 3-5 or a 3-6 on your personality side, it's about attuning. The pressure to see in the interrelatedness of all things and attuning to it. There's this interrelatedness, you know, third line. All the keynotes that you know about the third line are there, just like with the second and the first. This ability to try to go in and sample it, taste it, test it, and get out again, to make mistakes, to be really mutative, the third line. So the third line will be in this to attune or not to the institution that's being created to give us a mystical, spiritual, religious way of holding the unknown. These are all lower trigram. We have these here. These are lower trigram. That means when we have a hexagram, there's 6 lines lined up, and it's the first 3. That's the personal experience of it. When we go up into the upper trigram, we go transpersonal. So you can see all of a sudden someone with a 4th line, the pressure to influence or not, the pressure to get out and tell that tribe they need to buy this belief system. This is good. And remember, I think I was saying this last webinar, we make lots of things gods. You know, it's not just gods that we make gods. We also make philosophies and eating patterns, you know, veganism or vegetarianism or carnism. I mean, we can make many things into, you know, the right way to wear clothes. I think I said this last time, kids that get mobbed because they don't look a certain way, or they're not the right sex, or they're not, you know, there's so many ways that we glorify something, we embody it with something that has power, that then we want to associate with, hang out with, bond with, believe in. And then the 4th line will try and influence people to buy to become part of their network, and also to kick them out if they don't. You know, either you're in or you're out. The 5th line, the pressure to call or not. Now, there's where we go away from the 4th line, which is really about me and my people and who I know, into the 5th line, which is about, I don't care who it is, I'm just going to get it out into the world. I'm going to universalize it. It's transpersonal, and it's really about getting something that will support the tribe. And again, remember, this is all oriented, these 2 channels all are, in the mystical way, are oriented towards how do we maintain a healthy institution, a healthy society, a healthy tribe, meet it with the right principles, with the right loyalties. And if you don't give your loyalty to us, we're going to have to do something to you, you know, because the tribe becomes weakened when people are not supporting it. So the 5th line will attempt to universalize it out. It's not as engaged into, you know, it's got a message, but it's more about getting the message out than maintaining the structure of the tribe itself. And then the 6th line, if you're a 6-2 or a 6-3 profile, to separate or not, always with our beautiful 6 lines. This is the teaching of the 6th line, that it is ultimately to move into the embodiment of the self, as we were looking at in the first slides, where we had the understanding of the mind is here to live and experience the openness and gain wisdom, and then share it through who we are as a differentiated being. So we have someone like the Dalai Lama. It's real interesting to go into your design and see, all right, so what is my, what do I have there? Or to look at beings like this who make strong contributions to our tribal society. And he universalizes, but in a sort of fifth line way, but in a tribal way, doesn't he? I mean, we all feel like we're part of his family. He has the pressure to influence or not in his gate 19, because we look here at the fourth line of his profile, and then we go down to gate 19, we see it's open. So we know the need that is there, the pressure of the tribal need is to influence. So we can look at his life and see how, his being called in a way into the position of the Dalai Lama, them finding him and bringing him in and recognizing him as the incarnation of the previous Dalai Lama. And then with the whole destabilization that was happening inside of his country, where he then, with his people, left in order to hold the institution, the teaching, the knowledge together. The lines or the gates that he has in the mystical way, if we move up from the 19 to the 49 and the 40-37, the 51-25, and then the 10-20, we see that he has the 40-37. And he has gate 40 once in his moon, in his personality moon. This is, remember, our driving focus. And so we know that his pressure to influence is really going to have this driving focus of the recognition that to achieve liberation, all negative forces must be rejected. This is his mystical way. The whole purpose of religion is to facilitate love and compassion and patience and tolerance and humility and forgiveness. What are the opposites of that? For anything to exist, its opposite has to be there, right? So the whole purpose of religion is to achieve liberation from hate and lack of empathy and lack of patience and lack of tolerance and lack of humility and lack of forgiveness, blame, and all of that. Sounds like him, doesn't it? I mean, we really can hear that in his sort of role model, or to not use that word, but his position on the planet as being truly the role that's in profile, purpose, and function of the fourth line is the prophet, to bring his message out to his people, to influence them. And his people is mankind. And then he comes in with his beautiful gate 37 in Saturn, where the teaching comes. And we have what looks like this yummy line 5, love, the natural and unaffected devotion to the family. And the detriment that says the possibility of dependency turning love into hate. What's really interesting about this line, gate 37, line 5, is Osama bin Laden had it in the exaltation, natural harmony and sharing possible through friendship, love. And Adolf Hitler had it in detriment, the possibility, love, and the possibility of turning love into hate. So just because it's a nice, yummy, wonderful sounding gate, we can't turn these things into something other than just another presence of the energetic field. But here we have the Dalai Lama carrying both of them, both the detriment and the exaltation, and in Saturn, so where the lessons are learned, right? Where if you don't obey the laws of the design, you will have your teachings that come in. And just notice this isn't part of the mystical way, but then with his gate 27 being also in the fourth line in Uranus, that his way of caring and nurturing is Uranian, which is very transpersonal. He also then has the Saturn in the design side, in his form side, in the mother, the father, in exaltation. There is no polarity. Position of inherent respect that ensures a focus for the development of guidelines. So we look here at the mystical profile and we see he is a fourth line in his mystical profile. Here, his role is to influence, to be the one that brings the message to his people. And then we look to see what is the design. And so why isn't his message, repressive and locking us into some sort of dogma or religion that blinds us to all other ones? How is he so expansive in this? Well, this would be found in the rest of the design, or in the totality of the design. Whether one believes in religion or not, and whether one believes in rebirth or not, there isn't anyone who doesn't appreciate kindness and compassion. It's interesting that he has his design sun in gate 21 in line 6, and the pressure to separate or not in the line 6, in the form to separate, to be someone who is here as a role model by separating, by not being in the thick of it. He has it in his, I'm not quite sure why I put this in here. But I think one thing the mystical way does that's sort of interesting is that when we go from the 19 to the 49, and then we go to the 40-37, or 37 up to the 40, the 40, that channel, the 40-37, is a bridging channel. It shifts us. It's not actually part of the mystical way. It's a bridge in the mystical way that is then giving us access to gate 51, to gate 25, to the channel of initiation, where we are suddenly leaving the tribal bond, leaving the tribal blood bond, and leaping into the unknown that gate 25 represents: innocence, transpersonal love, the self, the higher self, I as a being, the behavior of me in the now. And this is his form. There could be a strong pull in the design, because it is his design sun, there could be, to stay on the ego circuit, which is what this is, rather than taking that leap over into the 51. Chaos, where ineffective action leads to disorder. Remember what we were saying about openness and how our mind learns from that. Well, we also learn to observe what we do in the now. Our design side is unconscious. So our conscious mind is going, we see it as it unfolds. We see it as it shows up, right? And so he can see the chaos that can be there when the life is driven by the material way. And yet we must take care of our bodies and have food and these things, and have a stable environment where we feel safe and nurtured. And Pope John Paul, another mystical man who had the 4-6 and the 40-37. He was, he's considered one of the better popes, I guess. He seems to have been very beloved, where he carries the gate 49. And this is, again, I may not have said this with the Dalai Lama, but when you have the 4-6 profile, for example, like these two men do, you look at the whole circuit through the fourth line, the pressure to influence, and each of the keynotes that would be for each of the gates. And then you'll layer in the lines of the gates that are actually defined in the chart. So he has the 37 in the 5th line, and he has his Saturn in the 4th line. So the 4th line relates to his profile, but the 5th line, then this is his Mercury, which is going to be what he is here to communicate, has this pressure to call or not, to be an expression where he calls out to others. So that'll be a layering in on what he is here to influence with, his ability to call. Does that make sense? Do you guys get that? So that you're doing this layering in. Your profile is what's really establishing your mystical profile. But then you have qualities that are coming in through the definition. But the profile is determining the role that you will play. Gurdjieff is another one here. He's a 3-5. He has gate 40. He has gate 19. Cross of the Maya, 3rd line profile. So here he's to attune or not. I mean, when you listen or read some of his work, if you follow his teachings, his beautiful work, and his capacity to attune to the Maya, attune to what it is that we're doing here and how to not be living in a state of hypnotic waking sleep, right? The 2 gates that he has, gate 19 and line 6, doesn't have that in his profile, so it's like another flavor, like adding a spice to the stew. It puts it in. It is what is consistent and reliable in him. When you have an activation, that's there. It's not going to go away. So he has the recluse, the avoidance of contact in general, but not exclusively. The fool on the hill, you know, Einstein had this as well. The sage that if you can find him will talk to you, the energy that generally fuels avoidance, or can be the sulking child. I mean, it can be, you know, clearly you can see it's the 6th line. What was the keynote that we know about the 6th line? It was the pressure to separate or not. Now he's a 3-5, but he's carrying a 6th line in his 19. So there's this additional quality. He's here to make the call and to attune and also separate. And that's where it starts. I mean, do you see how you can't make this such a simplistic thing that like there's a reduction in it that reduces you down to a simple something, and that human design is a limitation? Yes, it's a limitation in that we wear a specific design, but how we move within it and where we move within the world and what we see through our openness. This isn't determined through the design. Ra, the pressure to call. 1st line, the pressure to wonder. Having the gate 40. You know, gate 40, Ra said that his is in his personality or design Mars. You see it there? He said that was probably the one thing that made him available to this knowledge and to the voice, because it was a 2nd line. So he was here in that to receive, even though he doesn't have in his profile. He has gate 40 in line 2. So this to receive the call. So he received the call of the voice. And then through that, in his 5-1 heretical investigator way, he brought the shock and initiation, the channel of shock and initiation and awakening. You know, this whole leap. Like, another thing about gate 40 is it's tribal. It's also a gate of denial. So it turns around and looks at the bond and the need and the tribe and says no. No. Or yes, I will give you my heart. I do not know why I'm getting these things on here. Sorry about that. Can you guys hear that alarm thing go off? Does it? Yeah. Sorry about that. It's pretty annoying. I've closed everything, so I'm not sure why they're showing up. It's actually notifying me of this webinar. Okay. So here to initiate an impact in a heretical way. I mean, well, boy, did he do that. And boy, did he do it through a shocking way. You know, it's and his way, I mean, if you ever had the chance to be around him, just his energy was, I mean, manifestors can be like that, but my son's a manifestor and doesn't have that same quality because Ra has the 2551, that capacity to just sort of go through very deeply individual and integration about empowerment and self-empowerment. We have Bhagwan Osho. Let's see if I can read this up here. Intelligence is dangerous. Here we go to the mind. Intelligence means you will start thinking on your own and you will start looking around on your own and you will not believe in the scriptures. You will believe only in your own experience. So, you know, the teachings of Osho are also so beautiful because he really extracted out. So what's his, you know, the understanding that we're here as a witness consciousness. And he's a 2-4 profile. He received the call. For some reason, he became the guru, right? And then lots of calls. I mean, he became enormously influential. So he's got a 4th line, a 2-4 profile to influence, received the call and is here through his form, his body taking him where he can be of influence. And in his later years, before he went back to India, if you know of his history, I mean, if we think of the form and how this was influencing him, he owned something like 20 Rolls Royces and would drive around in them when they built the town in Antelope up in Oregon. But shock and initiation and the perfecting of the form coming in here, the gate of behavior, gate 10, participating in it, we see, I don't know if I have another slide of this for him. No. Whoops, how do I go back? There. This quote too, I really like of him. Never belong to a crowd, never belong to a nation, never belong to a religion, never belong to a race. Belong to the whole existence. Like the Dalai Lama, there's 4th line in there, right? Belonging, my network, my people. But who's his people? Whole existence. Why limit yourself to something so small when the whole is available? Shock and initiation. The pressure to receive the call and to influence. What else does he say there? If you love a flower, don't pick it up, because if you pick it up, it dies and it ceases to be what you love. So if you love a flower, let it be. Love is not about possession. Love is about appreciation. Here's our witnessing again. We're passenger consciousness. When I first heard about him, one of the things that attracted me so much to his teachings was he said, why go sit in a cave in isolation and meditate? Go dance on the seashore at sunrise. This is the meditation. And I thought, yeah. In other words, embrace life rather than try and leave life and go. Which I respond to as different paths for different people. This is Hermann Hesse. I studied him when I was at university and read all of his books. And so I thought it was so fascinating to see, because some of the books that he wrote were very mystical. One was Siddhartha, one was The Magical Bead Game, and then Steppenwolf, which was very popular. So Siddhartha has one single goal: to become empty. We have a 2-4 profile, to receive the call and influence. How did he bring his influence in? Unconsciously through the bond and his behavior. To become empty of thirst, of desire, of dreams, of pleasure and sorrow. Let the self die. No longer to be self. to experience the peace of an emptied heart and to experience pure thought. That was his goal. And let's see, what is his, where's his 4037? They're in 5th line. Cross of tension, provoking, being provocative, channel of provocation, of emoting, of moodiness. But his 40 in line 5 and his 37 in line 5, which is the pressure, to universalize, to call out. And so his books reached many in his mystical profile of to receive the call and to influence. We are the sun and the moon, dear friend. We are the sea and the land. It is not our purpose to become each other. It is to recognize each other and to learn to see each other and to honor him for what he is, each the other's opposite and complement. Our modern day mystic. If you've ever read about him, it's really interesting. He was training to be a doctor in the States. He'd moved his family here and was totally stressed out in his work of, what do you call it, interning, or when you're studying to be a doctor. It's quite overwhelming, I guess. And so he was very frazzled. And so he heard about meditation and decided to do a meditation course. And then we birthed Deepak Chopra and the gift that he is to the planet. The pressure to attune or not. So we went through the meditation line, right? He has nothing in the mystical way activated. So his 3-5 profile really is a strong influence there, where he attunes and then brings the information out to universalize this message. Be happy for no reason, like a child. If you're happy for a reason, you're in trouble because that reason can be taken from you. A human being is not an independent entity, but a particle of the nature of the whole. To make the right choices in life, you have to get in touch with your soul. We could say your design, right? You're to align with it. To do this, you need to experience solitude, which most people are afraid of. And because in the silence, you hear the truth and know the solutions. The cross of the laws, this mutative channel that comes in on the cross of the laws. So each of these people are having their own unique way of their mystical profile coming out into the world, them fulfilling their purpose. Our mystical profile is just an aspect of it. And you can see that not all of us are going to be pulled into structured religions, institutionalized religions. Many of us start that way, unless we had parents that had already sort of broken form with that. And it's not to say there's anything wrong with that. It's not to say that, if you do that, you're lost in some way. But it's to understand that it is a construct. It is something that we're living out because that's the dynamic here on this plane. Our current Pope, the 4-6 profile, this transitional profile, or it's not transitional, but it's upper trigram with, or it's upper trigram lines that is a right angle or personal profile. And to influence and separate. And what has he got in the mystical way? He's got gate 19. He's got the, in the 6th line, which again brings in the profile of his form to separate. He separates from the whole dogma of the Catholic Church in a way. I mean, yeah, he's a Catholic Pope, but he is someone who, here as the teacher, the ability to express the essential nature of peace in detriment, right? Both as his personality son, but also he has it in his nodes. So what he's here to see is to see the ones that are here receiving the call of the ideas. And he, with his detriment there, the guru, whose most valued wisdom is intentionally limited to a few ideas which can only be grasped by a few. He's really rocking the boat. He's perfecting the form, right? He's on the cross of Eden. Innocence that is thrown out into the world, and this, like, how do we come back to the garden? How do we come back to the innocence, to the purity of being? Well, it isn't by being caught up in the Maya of the material plane. He's a manifester. He's here to impact us that way. He's here to influence and separate. Let's see what I've got here. I have in his gates that are in the mystical way, the role model and the recluse. What was it? I think I heard that he chose not to sleep in the papal bedroom. Just give me a normal room, not drive around in the papal car, you know, the recluse, the role model. Like, how am I going to influence by showing we're here to separate? And the separate, remember, is coming back to being the witness, to separate from all the noise and come, you know, which we could say being thrown out of the garden, and come back to the garden, to the innocence, to the now. And there's all these different elements within his design, which we won't go into. So, Mr. Macaulay said, the doctrine which, from the very first origin of religious dissensions, has been held by bigots of all sects, when condensed into a few words, and stripped of rhetorical disguise, is simply this: I'm right and you're in the wrong. Either it's my way or it's the highway, right? When you are the stronger, you ought to tolerate me, for it is your duty to tolerate truth. But when I am the stronger, I shall persecute you, for it is my duty to persecute error. And this is this whole mystical way, you know, it's sort of until we make the leap. We go across from the 40 into the shock of leaving the tribe, leaping into the unknown, into the gate 25, into the center of the G, of the self. And then continuing on to the behavior of the self in the now, in the now, in the now, through the channel of awakening. I'll share this a little bit with you, because this is what I'll be teaching in January. I love this course. I think it's so fascinating. This is like another step. I mean, now we step away from the mystical way and the mystical profile, but the lines of your profile are expressions of all the things that we are and all the things we can identify through the circuitry in human design, you know, as ways of modalities of understanding. Here we have the another keynote that you can add to the line of your profile. But this is also in the Profile, Purpose, and Function course. This is also looking at what your color is, your motivation. So you see, with the first line profiles, we know are here with the introspection, to be the investigator. And if you have the first color, or actually it's the first tone, then you have the tone of fear, and the trajectory is here. I mean, these, for those of you who don't know anything about this is going to be a lot of words that are confusing. But what I want to just draw your attention to is to look at how, like, the grouping of the words, how they all kind of come together, how each one is here. When you are a first line something, first line profile, first line color tone, the first line carries, or the one carries all these thematics wherever it shows up. And why would we have introspection and investigation and fear? is to get us to go into finding the foundation and creating a solid base and then teaching it. So why do we need a solid base? I mean, well, in our early tribal beginnings, for example, if you ate the wrong mushroom, you might die, right? So, or go on a psychedelic trip. Or have a nice dinner. But the point being that the first line is really about, I'm going to get a solid understanding of this and I'll teach it. So first lines, or the one, because I say first line all the time, but it's the one, the one of the line, of the color, the tone, is really oriented towards establishing a solid foundation in order to be able to teach it and provide to externalize our outer authority. Remember, that's what our mind's here to do. Bring out what we know, our wisdom, the wisdom that we've gained, and according to our strategy and authority, we share it. And then we can do the same with the second line. So I think I have each of these on the slide. Let me see. There's nothing there. Oh, here we go. So you can see the first line, how we, as I just was going over it. And you can see how it's in opposition to the fourth line because they share the same position in the two trigrams of the hexagram. They're both the bottom of the trigram. And what can happen is that we can transfer over to what we're not. That we can do in another webinar, or you can take the course because it's too much to go into now. I just wanted to share these keynotes because they give you something to contemplate until the next time we meet. The hermit, the natural, projecting out their natural attunement, natural alignment, natural embodiment of the hexagram, the two. The guru will be called, and that's why I use this image here for him, because he's just doing his thing, and then people will come and say, can I sit here with you? How gurus begin to build up their following, and they're just in there being themselves, kind of like going, why are you disturbing me? I'm busy being myself, The priests that are the third line, remember that in the mystical way in 19, it was about attunement. And so the third line or the three desire, the three action, it's the top of the lower trigram bumping its head up against that upper trigram going, I know there's something out there. I know there's a world. It's not just personal. And so they have something to share. And they'll martyr their little heads on that ceiling they're trying to get through as they have that. And adaptation, the third line, is very mutative and adaptive. The fourth line, we talked a bit about that on the fourth lines that we were looking at through the prophet that is there. And it's an interesting distinction that Ra makes in this when he says the prophet here, the priest, the prophet, and the, what is the fifth line? The messenger, right? Whoops. Because this is all about to the people who are part of your network. They're not going to listen if they're not, so that's why it's really, their message is meant for those who are in attunement with them, who are part of their network. Where the opportunity is there. Okay, they're open to me. And yet we saw, like with the Dalai Lama as a fourth line being, that it can be, not everyone on the planet's open to him, but a very large network that he has. The fifth line, which is, and it can be the fifth color and it can be the fifth tone, which is this universalization, the messenger. Right? Because it's transpersonal. It's really here. Ra was here on the cross of the clarion as a messenger. People who have the fifth line in their profile have something to universalize, and it's here to be practical. It's here to have, been grounded in the natural embodiment of the hexagram. And this is technically the top of that hexagram, because then we go to the next one and it's the Buddha. There's nothing to do anymore but be. And that's what innocence means. This is what is called the agendaless agenda, or the motiveless motivation. It's just, what's your motivation? Me, to be me in this now. Not even that. I mean, even that's too much. It's not about even being me. I'm awareness. I'm here. I'm embodiment. The Buddha. I have the 19 in the mystical way. It's actually in my nodes in the 4th line. So I'm in environments, right? I'm a 3-5, so the attuning and the calling out, or universalizing the message in an environment where there is influence. Do you see? And this came in the second half of my life, where it became more of a thing after my Uranus opposition and went into the North Nodes. But remember, when with your South and North Nodes, they stay throughout your life. It's just the South Node is more present in the first half, and the North Node is more present in the second half. But it is in the design itself. And Lavina's, where she has no activations in the mystical way. So hers is really from the 3-5 profile, again, with this attuning and the call. So it's always so much fun to be with her. And share. Yeah.
My notes from kind of like assimilating what you just said, if I were to look at my design as an example, my 3rd line is the priestess, and the underlying color of motivation is called 2, the guru. And I would be adapting and attuning to the desire and fate as a guru priestess waiting to be called. Something like that?
Something like that. I mean, when I don't have it in front of me, it's hard for me to hold it in my head. With my design, I don't hold things. But from what you're saying, that's who I know. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. I really enjoyed. I remember you teaching this actually maybe 2.5 years ago, and really not being able to absorb when you got to those slides about the color and have it jive in my head. But this time it felt a lot more absorbable. So thank you.
Right. Yeah. No, it's great that you said that.
Yeah, when you dissected it too with each example, it really was helpful.
Yeah. And what is your color?
It's 2.
On the personality is the second color. Yeah. And see, mine is the 3rd color. So the priest, right? I mean, I'm a 3rd line and a 3rd color, and so there's more of this drive that is in there. This is where it starts getting so interesting and fascinating, because you begin to delineate out and see how you cannot reduce this down into, oh yeah, you're a projector, you're supposed to wait until you're recognized and be emotionally clear. It's I mean,
about what? Right?
Yeah, it's like
specific. It's way more specific than that.
These charts, of course, are surface charts, and there's power in the surface of the design. Deep knowing that can be grasped. But but as you work more and more on it and begin to see, oh, okay, so she's a creative role model, and it's unconscious. It's not even, it's her personality. Design Earth and design Moon. So there's really strong, this how, those of you who are friends with Lavina on Facebook, you can see how she's a creative role model and an inspiration through her form, and even this picture here, the way she moves through the world. and then the 30 of her personality sun being part of her her channel that brings in her authority. You know, where does it feel? Where does she recognize of the feelings that are actually, then we go to the third line, and then, as you were saying, the second color, motivation of hope, and the priest, no, not the priest, second hope, guru. Yeah. And yeah, the words can sometimes get in the way, and so you have to, that's why it's really to understand. I always say this to my students, you know, go behind the door of the word, see what the word is attempting to put a front on, so that we can go and say, yeah, we have to have something to communicate with. We need words, but we need to understand what's held within it, the context that is there. So if you're interested in the cosmology courses, then this is through IHDS that you can do that. That's my website below there.
I feel really grateful that you took the time to explain to us this information and how it's helpful to help go deeper below the surface level of the design. It was meeting my need for having a deeper understanding of how the mystical profiles work. So I really want to say thank you. And we have a few minutes and some energy if there's any curiosities or questions that anyone has that they would like to bring up in general. Specifically to your design, it would be really challenging for us to synthesize anything without looking at the deeper levels. So if you have any questions about the experience that you just had in observing the mystical profiles, or anything about the course coming up, please do feel free to unmute yourself or type into the chat what questions you have.
Yeah, so what'd you think? Did you like it? Inspired? Helena.
I always like this subject, you know that.
Yeah.
So and it's really complex, and that's something that becomes quite obvious, that it is quite complex.
Mm-hmm.
With all the nuances and everything that you have to synthesize and sort of all the things you need to synthesize when you see a chart. So it will be a challenge.
Yeah, well, the good thing is that when you do a foundation reading with someone, and this is where it gets fun, because I have some people that I work with month after month, you know, where we're just going into the design, and then we have the possibility to go deeper like this. But when you're just meeting your design, the most important thing is the foundation of it, the surface of it. You as the analyst, of course, want to have a bit more depth going on, so that when you're looking at it, I saw someone here write and saying, oh, can you, is there anything like on variable? I mean, variable's incredibly important and illuminating. And when you look at someone's chart and see what their variable is, it gives you a lot of information. So when you're speaking to them, you can focus in more. The same with this, you know, it's like each of us have, you know, these frequencies that we're wearing, I always say, but, you know, that we're attuned to or an expression of. Yeah.
Yeah. Would be interesting one day to see what you say when it's my chart.
Yeah. Yeah.
We will do that one day.
We'll do that. Yeah. David, what do you think?
Yeah.
I'm unmuted now, right?
Yep, you're talking.
Well, I'm fascinated. I would like to know a lot more to understand, I think, a little bit more what points you were making, but I have just enough knowledge to be, you know, kind of mystified by it all. So yeah, I'm actually hoping to learn a little bit more to get kind of a better grasp on everything. It seems to me, looking at all the profiles of the famous people, that these parts don't quite define the whole. In other words, the whole is greater than the parts, which the synergy of the energy seems to be. Somehow there's this manifestation of this incredible person, and we're looking at parts saying, how did that happen? And it's an interesting thing to see how that may have, those parts may have magnified each other or decreased each other to come up with that particular person.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, obviously, the complexity of the being
Right.
cannot be reduced down, and so that's why it's sort of like, okay, let's look through the pink window today, or the mystical window, or the biological window, or the motivation window, or on and on and on that we can go.
That's a fascinating part.
Yeah. You know, David and I have known each other since our early 20s, and he and I both were astrologers, so that was where I was together and used to challenge each other over different ways of viewing it. So it's very fun to have you here. Very nice. Yeah. Anybody else want to pop in with something? Do we have Jenna or Donna?
I'll just throw in my comment because I'm a 1-3 energy projector, and I really appreciated hearing the way that you used your filters to explain the material, because I just feel being immersed in this material and getting the reviews, and it constantly keeps it moving and growing depth and width, and so I really appreciate being part of of this class. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks, Kajana. It's so nice to see your face here. All of you that, it's so fun to have Zoom now and to be able to see everyone and share. Kathy, did you stay with us?
50%. Very interesting, but I kind of got lost, in the line and color and all of that stuff because I'm not that adept in that yet. But overall, I find it fascinating, and I will, when it's published, I'll review the whole thing again. And I just want to thank you because it's like an area that interests me.
Yeah, and it's so apropos to the time, because we're less than 10 years out from the shift. So we're all feeling the shift. That what I mean by that is in 2027, Ross said that the energy flow between the 19 and the 49 is falling away, it's decreasing, it's going to go away. And while we'll still all have it, I mean, our designs are our designs, we will carry the frequency of the 1949, the channel of synthesis, a design of sensitivity, and the pressure of need, both in the mystical way, the tribal way, however that need is being expressed. And yet the frequency is leaving the plane, it's phasing out. And so we're going to be seeing more and more of the reactions to that. So more radicalism, fundamentalism, more struggle towards attempting to hold on to it, because they, like if you're in a relationship and you can feel the relationship dying and you try to hold on to it and not let it go. It's the same sort of thing with this. It's like this is all we know is this frequency, and it's what's in our design. And so it's not about any kind of it's not an we're in trouble. It's just because if we're in alignment with our design, we came in with this moment already waiting for us. I mean, the moment that you are imprinted, we can predict or read the movement of the planets and all that sort of stuff into the future. It's all there. And so we just have to be the witness and watch it happen, and then it will be correct. We'll move through it correctly, and then we can support others do the same thing. And so, yeah, I don't know. Is anyone else? I see Patricia with video. Do you want to say anything? We don't hear you yet. You have to put you. Well, I can unmute you. Hold on. Maybe I can unmute. There. Now let's see if you have a mic.
I cannot ask. Sorry.
Oh, she's on the phone. That's fun. How about you, Donna? Would you like to say something, or Guido? Nope. So hi. Yeah. And then there's people who are here without video. There's lots of you here. Nellie, Trisha, Aaron. Hi, Aaron. You want to say something? I love hearing your voice. No. Well, how are we doing for time? We're getting towards the half hour. So, Lavina, do you want to come back in just for a bit and then we can finish up? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I've been posting the link to the brochure and everything around the interwebs. So I feel grateful, nice. Yeah, to have everyone here. Thank you so much for all of your support and engagement. And again, if you would like to review this particular class on the mystical profiles, it will be up on Darshana's website, and feel free to, on the YouTube page, feel free to share that with your friends and family, anyone who's interested in human design, to give them a little deeper understanding of how the mystical profiles work in human design.
Yeah, and then we'll do something again, another webinar after the turn of the year. Mm-hmm. We'll see. I'm going to be having my semester break in teaching for December and part of January, and then we start up again with classes in the middle of January.
Great.
And so then we'll see about what comes in. Maybe it could be interesting to either go into the profile and purpose, or maybe variable, doing something that does a little bit of work. I think it's great to be able to share with you what I've learned. You know, what we're always saying about how, you know, in my openness, I only have 2 centers defined and an awful lot of openness. And so I'm in here in service of your individualism. That's my design.
Yay.
So yay,
I definitely feel that, definitely recognize that. We have a lot of great comments from people who are appreciating the class. Kajela is asking, will you, Darshana, do a web class on PHS, color, tone, or variable soon? And so it sounds like you're interested in that, and she was just mentioning that. Can we take a class on that without being enrolled in a formal certificate program?
Yeah, well, you know that, I mean, I actually taught a class on color at IHDS a couple of years ago, just a one-off one, mm-hmm. and may do something like that again. It's, I mean, webinars, we can touch on things, but it's, you know, it's very complex knowledge. And so you could see, just like what Kathy was saying, you know, I dabbled with the profile, purpose, and function, and then it was like going, oh my God, because it, and even when I looked at it, I thought, whoa, there's a lot of words on that slide. You know, it's like, how do we stay with it and not get lost? And it takes time, you know, it takes time and familiarity. I mean, it's taken me, how long have I been with this? I've been 12 years with human design, full on. And so that's why I can speak better now. But there's others who have been with it, you know, way longer and are even more knowledgeable. But I would like to share it. So we'll see what we do next. And do write and tell us what you might be interested in, what you think would be a great webinar and or classes that could be offered. And then we can see about putting something together. Okay? Because it's fun to do.
Beautiful. And Guida is seconding a webinar about variable. I know that from my students, they're usually very curious about variable, so that might be something that would be interesting for everyone to engage in.
Yeah, they're amazing. I was actually at the event on Ibiza when Ra did the variable workshops, and was able to be in the workshop with him for my own variable. And I actually cried through the whole thing because it was just like, oh my God. I feel seen for the first time. Now I understand. Now it's like, okay, that's why my life was so hard. That's why I felt so stupid. That's why all these things. It's really powerful variable.
I feel a definite resonance with that. When I watched my variable video, I felt so much relief, and the recognition of seeing and being seen, for sure, is definitely something that everyone has a need for. So the variable can help ground a lot of your personal awareness in what you're here to be like and how you're here to be different.
Yeah.
Great recommendation, Guida. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay,
All right.
sweeties. This is it. Thanks for being here. Have a really wonderful December and change of the calendar year. And we'll keep posting. Lavina's very active in the, what do we call it, social media, and I'm trying to become more. and so because it's such a wonderful way to meet and connect.
Definitely.
And share.
Yes.
And share.
Great job.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful to be with you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.